LCSC students of online medieval world history. Professor Eric Martin here, and welcome to week 9. So, about midway through the semester here, I thought I would set up this week and next week, maybe talk a little bit about a few other things as we get going. Um, I've had a hard couple of weeks. I've been pretty sick. Um, but hopefully I'm on the mend, back together and getting things together. So let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing and then talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing. I'm pretty close to being caught up on grading. I'm still have your initial book analyses in the pipeline that I got to deal with, but I'm pretty close to caught up on everything with the Hansen book with the year 1000. I want to talk about that for a second and kind of what I was kind of thinking we're going to be using it for um, as we move into the second half of the class, right? Because the second half of the class is really focused on your own projects. And so the Hansen book is designed to, or at least the way I use it, to give you an idea about what you might want to do. You know, this is roughly a picture of the world, year 1000. Here's all this stuff going on, and this stuff is stuff that you can pick from to work for your own project for the final assignment for this class. And don't make things harder than they need to be. Use her bibliography in the back, use her suggested readings. If there's a topic in here that you want to know more about, use the readings to find out about that stuff. And one of the things the impressions I got from reading your postings in the discussion boards about the book itself was the level of, I won't necessarily call it surprise, although maybe, on y'all's part, in terms of the sophistication of the medieval world. I think people were surprised to see the kind of travel that was possible, to see the kind of technologies that were available, to see the kind of connections that were actually going on, you know, 1,000 years ago. That's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, congratulations on learning something, right? Um, Now, as far as like the method for going through that with sort of that formulaic discussion board business, I don't know if that's the best method, but that's the method we're using because it is directly connected to a system that I like to use for the book analyses. I wanted to try that out and see where we're going. And I just want to remind folks, the mission is to talk about history. All right, get on those discussion boards, talk about the documents, talk about the chapters, talk about history. And I'm using that book analysis setup just as a way to try to guide the conversation so that we get something more than I liked it or whatever. All right, that's the Hansen book. Let's talk about what we've got going on the next couple of weeks, starting with this week. So I've switched things up a little bit on this week, and you can see this from the syllabus, um, the to be announced. I need to catch up a little bit on some of y'all's grading. My guess is that some of y'all need to catch your breath a little bit before we get ready for the next thing. So it's like we need to catch our breath, do the next thing, catch our breath again with spring break, and make the final surge. So this is what I want to do for week 9. I want us to work with, there's an outfit known as History Hit They're pretty interesting. I like their stuff, and the author of your next book, um, Eleanor Yaniga, does stuff for them. So this first video, it's a 30-minute video looking at sex during the medieval period. And then this second video, it's exactly what it says it is. It's about booze during the medieval period. So it seems like we can switch gears up a little bit and take a look at that. So if everybody can participate, and I encourage you to do so. However, if your last name begins with the letters A through K, you are making this discussion on sex during the medieval period happen. And if your last name begins with the letters L through Z, you're making this discussion on booze happen. Now, how are we going to do the discussions? It ought to look real familiar, because I wanted to try the setup for the book analyses with the videos, where, all right, watch the video, take your notes. What's the author trying to prove in the selection? What are the different attitudes they're addressing? Do they have a particular perspective? What kind of sources are they using? Break it down into the component parts. See if you can fit it in with some of the other material. The most obvious material would be this stuff. But next week, the same question would apply for this stuff, right? So let's just use the book analysis setup as a way to look at these videos. All right. So that is the mission for week 9. All right. And then for week 10, I'm just going to set everything up for the next, couple of weeks with the video here. Now, what happened? For week 10, we're talking about this book. All right. So you guys can start that as soon as you want. Everybody is required to participate. This ought to look real familiar in terms of the way that I want you to set it up. And lo and behold, you're working your way through a official formal book analysis on this book. So you're discussing the book that you're about to have to write some stuff about. Make it work for you. Okay. So this will be due Thursday. I think that is the 20th. I think that'll be right before we blast for spring break. So get that together, get this discussion going. So on the one hand, the way this is laid out, the discussion's not supposed to start until March 18th. You guys can get it going now and talk as you go. Now let's talk a little bit about this book itself. I have a reading guide. It is not really a reading guide. I'll show you what I have though. I sat down to try to make a reading guide to this book the last time I used it. It's in the resource warehouse. Where is it? Right here, reading guide, the Middle Ages. Really, what I wound up doing is going through the book and just writing down all the bold print. That is a really easy way for me to take a look at this and kind of get an idea about what's being discussed. It's a really easy way for me to get a sense of, the broad concepts at any particular place. It's not a reading guide. So, go ahead and use it if you want to. I mean, this is a good spot to get an idea about different things that are being discussed, and sort of a fancy index or table of contents. But really, what I want y'all doing as you're reading this, is same thing as you were doing with the year 1000. This is laying out this is mostly focused on Europe, not entirely, but mostly. Okay. And the idea behind this is what are some of the misconceptions about the Middle Age or Middle Ages that people are likely to have? Um, in this particular case, she gives us a pretty nice idea about the difference between different periods in the Middle Ages. But really, this is meant to be another bit of recon for you guys. That if you're still trying to sort out exactly what you want to do for the final project for the class, this could give you some ideas. All right, so it ought to be easy enough to integrate these two books together in some way, shape, or form. Even if, on the one hand, you really want to talk about, medieval China and then somehow connect the Crusades to it. That's not impossible, right? But that's the point of the book, is to give you a broad look at what's happening at Europe during the time, give you the names, the players, the dates, those kinds of things, and some ideas about what's going on. Also, Eleanor Yanaga's reading guide on the very last page is not nearly as extensive as Valerie Hanson's. However, it's still pretty good. And so, again, I don't know that you guys need to go out and reinvent the wheel. When you're looking for sources, if there is books on their lists that look pretty good, check them out, see if you want to use them. All right. So that will get us to spring break. And then after spring break, we'll reconvene. But I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Okay? That'll get us to spring break. When we come back from spring break, I want us to start looking at formal essay outlines. And I have got those set up already. Week 10, even though it's not really, week 11. Even though it's not really ready for you to look at with any kind of directions or anything. This is what we're doing when we come back from spring break. You're going to start putting together your essays. You're going to start building your argument. You're going to start thinking about how you want to organize it. It's really what we're looking at here is it can be as long as you want it to be, and the longer it is, the better it probably is. But it doesn't have to be more than a page as long as you include some detail. It's time to start sketching out what you want to do with your first formal essay. Okay, it's time to start sketching that kind of stuff out. And you know what, I might as well talk about this a little bit since I'm here. Go through the details of what I want out of this outline. Some of the sections are going to be more fleshed out than others. Some of the sections are going to say, I'm going to use this part from Hanson. I've got this other book that I'm using. I've got this book that I'm looking for. I don't really know what I'm doing about this. I know there's another thing to do. I want you to put an hour or two of thought into what your formal essay might look like, because here is the problem that many folks run into. If this was a chemistry class, nobody would, I hope, would wake up one morning and decide, oh my gosh, my chemistry project is due. Better run to the lab. Grab a little of this off the shelf, a little of this off the shelf, mix them up, start shaking them up, put them on top of a Bunsen burner. Here's my experiment, right? Because that's not how, chemistry works. You actually have to know what those things are and why you're using them. You have to have some kind of a method. in terms of why you're applying the heat, what you expect. Well, guess what? History's the same way. You got to have some sort of rationale behind why you're using the sources that you're using, why you're trying to set up the comparisons that you're comparing, why you're starting at certain periods and ending at other periods, right? And so this outline is my way of asking you to spend a couple hours thinking about that so that your projects have some structure. All right. I'm just going to keep going with this for a minute. Didn't really intend to get this far into it, but it seems like this is probably about where we're at this point, right? So we're talking about the post-spring break business then, where the week we come back, we'll talk about our format outlines. Between now and then, I will get some sort of system together for how you guys are going to make your presentations to the class. Okay. At the moment, if you want to look to see what I did the last couple of times I taught the course, you can look at the research presentation URLs. These are some of the presentations that people have done in the past. I encourage you to look at them to get an idea about what I'm looking for. And somewhere here, Zoom presentation recording instructions. My experience is that you guys are better at this than I am. So, if you've got some other way that you do it, fine. But, I'm thinking we'll just load these things up to YouTube and then you guys will provide a link. I'll get you some additional details on what this stuff is supposed to look like for this class. But just so that you know, this is just some of the stuff that I've used in the past. So if you're the kind of person who I really like to see what some of the guidelines are, you can get into that. But my mission over spring break is to update that stuff, okay? But the point is, come back to our syllabus here. The point is that we're watching those videos and taking a short break next week. This week. Excuse me. The week after that, we're focusing on the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages book. Spring break. Outlines of our projects. Talking about how we're uploading our projects. Right? And then I've got a few different days set out for days for your projects. I'm going to think that through a little bit, but you guys should expect, your projects probably mid April. Because the class ends before you know it, right? And your formal essay is due, I think that's May 1st. Right? I mean, that's what I'm thinking too. It's just like, wow, it really starts to speed up. So the last few minutes, all the post-spring break stuff, I didn't really intend to get into when I started the talk. But it seems like, just to kind of give you guys heads up about this is what's coming up. This is what you can expect. These are the ways you can start preparing for it. I'll get in. I'll start dealing with your book analyses to kind of see where people are with projects. But once it's kind of time to start settling in on projects, getting a little stack of books together, starting to read them, starting to get familiar with the ideas behind the final project for the course. All right. Got any questions? um, hit me up during my office hours. Otherwise, enjoy your historical studies.